This is the tutorial for the Selsey top. If you don't already have the pattern, the link is in the description. Here we have fabric laid out. The selvages, the edges of the fabric have been folded in towards the centre. So you've got two folds, one either side. And I've laid the pattern on each fold in line with the grain. This one is folded in half and then folded up, so you've got two cut on the fold. So we've got all our pieces cut out. Now we're going to find the arm size. These are the curves that form the armholes. One on each side of our top, front or back. Now you can just overlock or zigzag the edge and turn it once and stitch it, but I think this is such a nice top that it's worth taking the time to do a turn and turn hem. There we go, just turn it over a little bit. You can pin it, tack it if you need to. Again, it's worth taking a little bit of extra time, I think. When something's fairly straightforward, you can afford to just put a little bit more effort into the execution. There we are, just stitching really close to the edge, little back tack. And I'm doing the other arm side on the other side as well in the same way. There you can see, nice little hem. And on the other one, give it a good press and repeat for the other side. So that's what you're left with. Nicely finished arm size. Now we're going to do the side seams. So I've placed my front or back, because both pieces are the same for this, right side up, and then I'm placing the one on top right side down. So the right sides of my fabric are on the inside. I'm going to match those arm size and the side seams there, give them a pin, again pin or tack, whichever is better for you. I'm just going to pop a few pins in just to hold it together as it's quite slippy fabric. I'm going to pop that under my machine. Little back tack at the beginning. It's a centimetre seam allowance. All my seam allowances are always a centimetre unless stated otherwise in the instructions. So we're going to line the edge of the fabric up with the centimetre mark on the plate on the machine and whiz down that side seam. Little back tack at the bottom so it doesn't come unravelled. One seam done. There we are, just a plain seam. I'm going to overlock mine. That's how it looks on the right side. That's it overlocked. And that's the other side. Obviously you need to do both side seams. And I've pressed this to one side, usually towards the back. So it's all nice and crisp now where it's been pressed. Show you on the inside. There we go, look, you can see it's been pressed to one side. So now we're going to do the casing for our necktie. So I've got the top neckline part here and I'm folding it in half. I'm going to neaten it up on the table so that those arm size match again. Try and get it as square as possible. And then grab your pattern. You can see there's various markings on there. So if I line that up and then fold it over on that first line, you can see the line is there, look. That's your fold line. I'm just marking it with some chalk. And then I'm going to use that dotted line as a guide. That's your stitch line. That's where the fabric folds down to. So again, just a nice guideline there. Mark that with my chalk. And flip it over and do the same on the other side. Match up those arm size nicely, make sure it's all square, and mark it with chalk. You can just mark it straight onto the fabric from the ironing board and just kind of, to get your tape measure, fold it over and measure it, but I like a little chalk line, it's just simpler for me. You can just about see it. So that's where you're going to fold it and press a nice crisp line into it. There you go, you can see quite clearly the press lines in the top of that. So I'm going to overlock the top edge so that it won't fray and it's nice and neat. There you go. Fold that down and you can see it sort of meets the fold line that we've pressed in there. So that will be my approximate stitch line. I'm going to sew it at the top of the overlocking. So a quick back tack to start. I've lined my needle up with the top of the overlocking and off we go. Gonna whiz along there, another back tack, trim off the untidy threads. That's it, give those a snip. You can see it's starting to take shape now. We just need that extra line of stitching to make the casing, which is halfway between the top folded edge and that stitch line. So I'm going to measure down 3 centimetres, pop some pins in, and maybe mark it with some chalk. You can again fold it and press it in. You could, if depending on your fabric, mark it with a soft pencil or one of those invisible pens that disappears when it's ironed or washed. Entirely up to you. I've got a handy ruler there that's marked in increments that are 1/2 centimetre, so I can just show you quickly how I've marked it with a bit of chalk. There we go, we've got a little chalk line there that I'll follow with my stitching. So back under the machine, start with a back tack, and off we go. One of the lovely things about this top is that your stitching doesn't have to be perfectly straight. If you have a little wobble, it will not show. It's going to be gathered, so it all gets lost in the gathering. There we go, one casing. Repeat for the other side. And onto the hem. There we go. This is the bottom edge of the top. Just looking here we go. Fold and fold. You can again overlock or zigzag and just turn it up and stitch it. Again, I think it's quite nice to have it turned and turned if you have got the time. So just 1/2 centimetre and 1/2 centimetre. You can always turn it, pin it, press it before you sew it. That can sometimes help if it's a bit slippy, the fabric, or this one's quite springy. There we are, a couple of pins in, and I'm going to stitch right on that edge there. Pop it under the machine, line it all up. Off we go. And we've stitched it all the way around. I've given it a press. That looks quite smart. So there you go, nice crisp hem. Now we're moving on to the necktie. I've got 2 pieces for this and they're both right sides together again. So you're going to stitch on the wrong sides. I'm going to put a pin in the point there and put a few pins down the length of it as well. Again, as it's long, if you're worried about it gathering up, you can always tack it first. I'm going to mark with my chalk 5 centimetre space so that I can turn it through, and I've offset it. I haven't put it in the middle, I've put it sort of 1/4 of a distance along from the point really. because hopefully then it just gets lost in the gathering when you thread it through. So a quick back tack, we're doing a centimetre seam allowance again, little turn and pivot on the corners there, lift your foot up, twist it round, off you go to the next point, twist it round again, pop your foot down, off you go, last point, twist and turn, there we go, and off again. So back to your centimetre seam allowance, whiz down the length of the tie on this side. This side doesn't have the opening on it. All the way to the other points and do the same, pivot and turn. Remembering to stop at your chalk mark or whatever you've used to mark your 5 centimetre space. Quick back tack so it doesn't unravel. There we go, so we can pull it through that little space now. I'm going to do a little bit of clipping. It's very light, this fabric that I've used, so it doesn't need an awful lot really, but I like to try and make the points as sharp as possible, so I'm going to clip those like that and then grade this seam allowance, which basically means trimming one down shorter than the other side, which is supposed to reduce bulk. Again, this isn't terribly bulky, this fabric, but it just helps the points to be more pointy if you've got less fabric to press when they're turned through. Other side, quick trim and a quick grade. You can do it for the whole tie if you want to, but like I said, this is such light fabric. I'm going to start turning that through now. There we go, looks like a snake in this fabric. I'm just going to turn it through with my fingers. You can use a knitting needle or you can use your scissors, but I'd be super careful if I were you, especially if it's a nice light delicate fabric. But a nice big thick chunky knitting needle's a good option for doing this. So pulled it through, and now I'm going to get those points. I'm using a little pin to just tease them out. Again, be super careful because it's very easy to just pull the threads out and then you get a little hairy point instead of a nice crisp one. That's sort of what it's going to look like. And now I roll this between my fingers. It's a bit fiddly, it's not the easiest job in the world. There we go. And I'm going to press that now. So I've rolled those seams out, given it a good press. You can see there's my gap, look. But because that's going to be hidden in my gathering, I'm going to leave it. You can stitch it by hand if you want to, or if your fabric frays a lot, it's sometimes advisable. Right, so I'm going to pop a safety pin on the end. This is my method of choice, and I'm just going to feed it through, trying to keep it reasonably flat. I mean, it will gather up in there, but try not to get it twisted around too many times so it's not too bulky. I'm just going to wiggle that all the way through. Out it pops the other side. Take that pin off, pop it on the other side. Even out those gathers a little bit first so you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. That's looking really nice. Need to pop that on and adjust those ruffles the way that you want them to be when you wear it, really. So let's put the pin in here and pick up the other side and thread it through. Again, try not to twist it too much, put it through. And then, like I say, it's really popping it on and adjusting it when it's on you so that it sits nicely. I'll just even those gathers out a little bit, give you an idea of what it's going to look like when it's on. And tie the side. There you go. That's one Selsey top. Enjoy.